Here at the Engine Performance Expo, Joe Castello and Lake Speed, joined by Mr. Vic Hill for a live episode of Hidden Horsepower. Lake, very excited about this one. Vic's got a great background. He was there for a lot of the golden era when your dad was racing. Right. I'm a race fan watching on television. Vic is out there building power. Vic, welcome.
Thank you.
So one cool thing about Vic is he actually worked at Bahari with Mark Cronquist, who was sitting in this chair yesterday.
Really?
So, yeah, sitting right where you are.
I haven't seen Mark in 10 years or more.
So that was one of the things that Mark really commented about how much he enjoyed this. Is like, I mean, he was talking to Keith Dorton and Billy said, man, I haven't talked to these guys in 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, if you don't stop for a moment, because you're always so busy and laser focused on what you're doing, right, you miss that interaction. You know,
miss your friends that you grew. You know, we grew up doing this.
Right.
I started in the Cup stuff in '83, right out of high school, and
how does that happen? How does that happen? There's got to be a great story right there. Yeah, I started in the Cup stuff right out of high school. It's like, no, you can't skip that. We've got a lot of time.
My background in racing at that point was nothing. Pretty much my family. My granddad was he was chief of staff, doctors. No one knew anything about racing, and I watched it on television, believe it or not. And my dad told me, he said, if you want to be in this, you need to move to North Carolina. So I worked in Pigeon Forge and worked at go-kart tracks and water slides and all that stuff. Saved up $500 and shot off to Winston-Salem and got a room over there in a boarding house, believe it or not, for the School of the Arts.
Yeah.
Cost me $100 a month.
Right.
And I was at Childress's every day. Wanting a job. Well, my resume wasn't anything but water slides and stuff like that. But anyway, finally, Bob Gurrell came out, and he did the cylinder heads then. And so I get hired, I think. So I go in there, and he's got me flowing cylinder heads, angle milling cylinder heads, and just some basic stuff. And I'm working my ass off while I'd been there a month. Never got any money. Well, by this time, I'm broke.
Right.
And there was a neighborhood, you know, over from Childress's, his old place there. And he thought I was just some kid out of the neighborhood that came there to work. Anyway, so I went to Bob. I said, look, am I going to get paid here, get a check? And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm broke. I said, I'm from Tennessee. I had $500, drove that Maverick over here. And he went, oh, hell. He said, I thought you were just some kid in this neighborhood. So he started paying me out of his check.
No.
And yes, he did. And so I stayed with him. And actually, Bob left and made that, what was it, Flow Dynamics, and just did cylinder heads for different teams and different stuff. Did that for, it was in Madison, North Carolina. And that's how I started racing. I actually met some guys that owned a gas station up there. Their brother raced, and they said, hey, would you like to race? I said, you build an engine, we'll build a car. Oh, hell yeah. So that's how I started racing there. Anyway, I went back to Childress's after that. Bob and I both did with Earnhardt, and was there, I guess, through 87. And at that time, I still had aspirations of being a Dale Earnhardt or whatever. And so I went with Bobby Wallach. Remember him?
Oh yeah, remember.
Well, he did a lot of R&D with Childress on engine stuff. He'd run whatever. Well, I went to his place for a year, or actually 8 months, and was going to get to drive his car at North Wilkesboro.
Ooh.
And I'm 21 years old, thinking this is great. So I worked my butt off, and it didn't happen. We won't get into all that, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen. So at that point, I went to work for. Where did I go after that? I guess I went to work for Cale Yarborough.
Right.
And I worked there.
And my dad drove there.
Your dad drove there. I was there with him and Dale Jarrett, his retirement year.
Yep.
With your dad, Trickle.
Yep.
And ended up being crew chief for Trickle a little bit when he drove Ken Allen's ARCA cars and so on. And we ran a few cup races.
And
anyway,
J.E. Beard was there.
J.E. Beard.
Because J.E. was my dad's head engine builder.
He was a head engine builder. When I was there, Keith Russell and J.E.
Okay.
were there, and then by the time your dad got there, it was J.E., and I had moved on and was just doing cylinder heads for different people at that time, because I was racing every weekend, and that's when Mark Conquest called, said, look, we need some help up here. So I went up, met him and Chuck Ryder and Bill Engel was crew chief.
Yeah, exactly.
Went to worked there for, I guess, till 92.
Right.
And then
that's the 30 Pennzoil car with Michael Waltrip.
Yeah, with Michael Waltrip. Great time. And Ron Purrier was head engine builder by the time I left. And Ron and I didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. And Ron fired me. And I was like, okay, well, it just gave me more time to race, basically. So I left, and this is what's coincidental about racing's full circle. 20 years later, 25 years later, Ron is at Morgan McClure's and calls me. My shop's 100 miles from here, and says, Vic, we need some help up here in the cylinder head department.
Right.
It's like, really? So I drive up, and the same guy fired me 25 years earlier. And so ended up, until they closed, I did all their cylinder head stuff.
Yep.
Redid whatever heads they had, did some new heads for them, got to test drive their cars. I loved it. I had a ball. I hate the cars.
I didn't know you test drove some cars.
Oh, yeah. Larry actually said, hell, you are a race car driver, but you're just too damn old now. I won't say what I said back to him, but you know me well enough.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So that's kind of cool, because I know when you were doing that work for McClure's bunch, they had bought a bunch of our R07 engines from Gibbs when we went to Toyota. I remember you calling up and said, "Oh man, they were changing camshafts, like a brand new engine, right? That basically had just won races. First thing they do is, oh, that engine's no good.
Yeah,
let's change the camshaft. Tell them the story."
Oh no.
Okay, fair enough.
No. Too much work for nothing.
Okay.
Wow.
For no reason. But yeah.
Registration mounts.
And then and like I said, my dirt stuff, I've got, started my own business 22 years ago. And Jason Lawson, he's my main guy.
Oh yeah.
He's been with, I guess,
Jason's awesome.
Since day one.
Yeah, Jason.
I drug him out from the hood of a diesel truck in a Chevrolet dealership. I knew he was a mechanic and could work on anything. And I said, "You want to do this?" "Oh yeah." And so he's been with me the whole time, and Daryl and Dave that helps me with the cylinder heads.
Yep.
So I've got a good group, and all of us been together for 15 to 20 years. And it's, like I said, it's turned a hobby and a passion and all that into a business that makes some money, and I still have fun.
And you get to go racing.
And I get to go racing.
Because you actually race dirt late models and have actually traveled and done quite a bit.
Yeah, won quite a bit. My first race this year will be Bristol.
Okay.
I'm gonna go up there, and then I'm possibly with Volunteer Speedway. I've won a ton of races. I've been involved with that track for 20 years. It's 2 miles from my shop, and
for those who don't know, it's called Bulls
Gap. Yep. And we're working on right now having a late model race there. The Thursday before, I don't know the date. It's somewhere around the 15th of April, and it's going to be Kyle Larson, myself, and Michael Rigsby promoting this and having a super late model race.
That's fantastic.
If it happens. We're working on it right now.
Right.
Kyle Larson.
Yeah.
He's pretty good.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Pretty good.
That's too bad in anything on dirt.
Pretty
Right,
talented young
exactly.
man.
Anything with the wheel.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah.
So dirt late models mostly.
90%. Yep.
That is a crazy world in that very popular kind of cultish atmosphere.
It's in the last 5 years, it's really gotten popular. And my business it's doing better than it's ever done, other than getting parts. Everybody's struggling with that across the country, but the dirt late model scene is real exciting right now, and they race pretty much. I hope this isn't too much racing for the public, but hell, we're racing year round, so we never get an off season.
No, there is no off
We're
season.
constant. I mean, they're racing in Vado, New Mexico tonight.
Okay.
And then they'll race in Volusia County next week,
Right.
and then it's on. It's like 20 races in the next 30 days.
Yeah, it never stops.
No, it never stops.
So talk for a little bit about the innovation, because I know we've known each other for a long time. We actually even developed some oils together. Like the Driven XP5, that product was something that you and I developed together because we saw some things with the full synthetic that just weren't
For the dirt world.
For the dirt world, it was spot on. So we kind of did that. So you, several years ago, and I can't remember the exact time frame, you might, decided, you know what, I want to do my own block. I want to do this wide bore deal. Tell that story a little bit.
Okay. So I'm at McClure's when the R07 is in development.
Right.
And there was an R99 cylinder head. And the R99 cylinder head was a 4,500 bore spacing engine, but the block, the bell housing mount, all that was the same as what we run in a dirt car. The R07, completely different. You had to there was way too much change to bring that into the sport. So when I saw this, I'm involved with some of the R&D with all the NASCAR stuff. I thought, boy, that'd be a badass dirt engine. So it took 2 years. I got a cylinder head and basically started with that. And piston, rocker setup, block. The first three were billet blocks, and we built them for Scott.
Right.
Lundquist. and showed up in Florida the first year. I think it was 2006, honestly. I mean, it was a long time ago.
I thought so.
And he won. I mean, he won. And there were other people, oh, they need to outlaw that. And I said, it's dirt racing. Hell, you can run a big block if you want to. I said, I just did this. So it took a while to get Dart is the first company that actually did a block for us that had we've got our own lifter pattern, own cam core, pretty much our own cylinder head now. It's cast just for us.
Okay.
And
kind of evolution of the R99.
it's just rolled up, and now it's I mean, I'm a little prejudiced towards it, but I think it's the best combination in the dirt racing, from running from A to B. And I build the Ford, the RY45. I've done them, and the wedge engine, and all of them can win races. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But I think just driver preference with what's going on in our world or our sport, this is the most versatile one that drives good when it's slick, and it'll get the job done when it's just hammer down wide open.
Yeah. Well, I remember when we were, not long ago, I stopped by the shop, and you were kind of showing me, hey, the manifolds, man, the manifold for your engine with that style head versus the other manifolds, the line of sight.
Everything's straighter. You can make, and you don't have to have the volume in the manifold or the cylinder head to make power upstairs with it. And it makes a lot more torque, which makes it more drivable.
Exactly.
Like I said, people say, well, it makes more torque, it'll spin. No. If you're a driver and you have something that doesn't make torque and you're trying to accelerate, you go further, and all of a sudden the thing takes off and it spins the tire. If it moves the car right here, then you just be smooth on the gas and smooth off the gas, and it goes A to B.
And your driving background
helps a lot. Right. Yeah.
Instead of that, the telephone game, right?
Right.
Like, this is what it feels like. This is what it's doing. Please make it better. Can you? You understood that internally, and
right, and that's, like I said, I've driven other people's engines, and there are places that like I said, there's great engine builders in this sport,
right,
and they all can win races. But for my racing and most of the customers that I've dealt with that race professionally like that combination better than the one that may just hit hard right here at the top.
Yeah,
so. It's I get to drive the other ones, and I felt them. I'm like, yeah, I mean, you can go fast with that thing, but here's what I don't like about it. And kind of like we're sitting here talking about all this, we do that with drivers. We've gone to the racetrack and had this engine and this one, and all get in each other's cars,
right, and
get out and go, okay, let's talk about it. So, and that's helped me develop what we do.
Because you understand different drivers have different driving styles and feels.
Absolutely.
So it's like what works for you may not work for that guy, and that's why there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Exactly.
But what I always liked about you is that you're not afraid to try something.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what makes it exciting.
Right.
I mean, that's the challenge and the competitiveness of the sport, and that's what I've loved about it the whole time.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I chose to stay in this dirt world is pretty wide door there you can play in. You know?
Exactly.
Well, and that's something we hear about from everybody that in the engine building game, trade, whatever you want to call it, being restricted or limited in creativity by rules, they don't like it.
No.
We all hate rules.
They hate rules, hate restrictions, limitations, lack of creativity.
Right.
And sometimes even the word "it's less fun" has crept in there. We've heard that a couple of times.
Oh, it is less fun.
Absolutely.
It's less fun.
I mean, when you've got a manifold, like the thing I've worked real hard on, but you can't run that because this radius is not, it's got to be this radius, it's got to be an 1/8 inch radius here. It takes all the fun out of it. Then you're just going to a job, you may as well work in a plant and make 1,000 of those a day.
Right.
I like to be innovative.
Exactly.
It makes it fun.
Exactly, which is why we will. You can only talk about what you want to talk about, but I know there's some projects that you're working on right now that are kind of cool. That's outside the box. Like no one's ever done that in your arena, right? So we won't say anything about it, but you're thinking outside the box.
Yeah. And it'll be, be better. I know it'll be better. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not telling anybody.
All right, so
That's why I gave you the option if you wanted to spill the beans or not.
Top secret stuff going on, but I will warn you, or just advanced notice, so you can start thinking about it in the back of your head. You did mention that you raced with Earnhardt, and stuff. So before we let you out of here, you're gonna have to tell us some. You don't have to say it now. At some point, before we let you out of here, you got to drop some sort of Earnhardt story on us, because that would be a big waste of you know, we got to extract that. Someone would beat me up if I didn't.
Here's what I find is interesting here. Now I know the origin story of Vic Hill, because I mean, Vic has been doing this since the old manual hand grinding, iron heads, doing all that. Because we're going to rope you back in later. There's a cylinder head roundtable with Martin guys from Brodix. Oh, yeah. You just got drafted in the roundtable, by the way. So you're only an hour away from home, so it's no big deal. You can hang out.
That's Friday, though.
It is Friday.
It is Friday.
My guys even get off at 3 o'clock
Crystal
today.
will be okay. It's all right. It's all right. He's got to stay a little bit longer, all right? Just let it go. Right. But anyway, it was basically dumb luck. It was cylinder heads. If you hadn't gone to Childress and hooked up with him, it wouldn't have been cylinder heads. If it had been somebody else,
it was the right timing. And then, like I said, doing it the way I did it, and it wasn't just a party. It was going to college. It was preparing. So I didn't go there just to get a job and say I was on a NASCAR team. I wanted to learn.
Right.
And so the first 4 to 5 years in that, I didn't make any money. No. I mean, you got paid, but I didn't make any money. But I was learning. Right. Making myself more valuable, and then it's turned into a great life.
And see, that's a great life lesson for everybody out there. It's something that we hear about all the time on Hidden Horsepower. At the end, we always ask for advice, and maybe something that people don't relate to, like a younger generation don't relate to. It's like, I'm not getting paid, but what I'm receiving is worth more than money.
It's going to pay dividends later. Well, and that's a lot of people think that you can go in our sport, because it's innovative. It's not cut and dry the same. Kids will go to a school, and they'll come out of that school and they'll think, I can make $80,000 a year building engines now. Well, they can't, because it's not one specific thing you're doing. When you're in that school, it gives you a baseline of
what these things
basic thing. But as far as to turn that and to generate a living out of that, you have to make money. So you have to produce. So even though you know that that's a Bridgeport and it turns on, you gotta know how to use it and be around it. And like I said, I think the schooling,
be proficient using it.
Exactly.
Proficiency takes time.
Live the experience.
Basically. Right. And like I said, younger generations, I think sometimes are skewed on, they see all the money an engine builder make. Expectation, and they don't realize what it took to get to that point.
Right. And I think in your story, your example is, yes, it's not just a fable that if you put in the effort and don't really make the money, but you're learning along the way, the dividends do pay off down the road. Right. It's not a fable. It's not what your grandfather is telling you. Right. It's real. Everyone that's sat in this chair and done this has always told us the same story, Joe. It's over and over again. Same story. You work hard, not making a lot of money, but you learn. You make connections, and the next thing you know,
you're making money. Yeah, you're successful, or as successful as you want to be, and enjoy it. That's that's the other thing. If you don't enjoy this sport, don't get into it just to have a job, because it can be very tough.
You better be ready to work. You better be ready to work. Yeah. Well, the thing is, so I'm an East Tennessee guy, which is one of the reasons why I wanted him here, right? I went to the University of Tennessee right down the road in Knoxville, was married here, had our first kid here, and all that. So when I would come over to visit our in-laws and stuff, I'd always come rolling up in here, and I knew if I came rolling by the shop at 5 o'clock or 6, they're still going to be there. And Vic would be on the dyno, and I mean, it's Vic running the dyno, right? It's Vic Hill Racing Engines. It's not somebody else running the dyno. Right. It's Vic running the dyno. We're in there trying fuel. I would never forget that time the first time you tried Q16.
Oh yeah.
It was the first day I showed up, and we were touching that stuff, smelling that stuff. About 10 minutes later, we're like, oh my God, what the hell was that?
Makes 20 more, but don't get too close to the can.
I understand lake speeds so much more now.
Sniffing gas.
Yes, exactly. And I have to say, don't do that.
Yeah.
You kids out there, do not
do that.
Well, I was tempted earlier when Gary was up here. It's like, what's this stuff smell like?
Yeah.
I mean, I literally grew up around, racing cars. Man, that's the first thing I remember are go-karts and the sound of engines and two-strokes and
the smell.
And castor bean oil and methanol is the greatest smell in the world. Yeah. So, you got to smell the stuff. I just didn't know it was a bad idea. Sorry, Freddie.
No, No, that's it. People, those aspects are ingrained in the experience, right? The smells, the sights, the sounds, all of those things are part of it. It's not just one thing. It's not just cool cars and competition. It's this whole extra sensory thing. That's what motorsports is. That's what we're selling, and that's why everybody who watches on TV, you're getting some of it. But you're not getting
the real deal.
You're not getting the real deal. The real deal happens at the track. And I know in NHRA that's our biggest problem.
Yeah.
That's our biggest problem. It's like, man, we wish you could pull you out there because we would change your perspective.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the first time I went to one of those, the Top Fuel and everything, I'd been around the NASCAR and all that, and I'd never been to one. And it was the Bristol, whatever, the spring or fall, I can't remember which one. And when I'm telling you, when the funny cars got up there, and I'm standing right there at the fence, and they come by, and your whole body shakes like, oh, yeah, it's exciting.
How does it even happen?
Yeah.
Even my wife and kids, who could care less about racing, like going to a drag race to see the fuel cars run.
It's exciting. Yeah.
So you mentioned there's projects that you're working on, but you can't mention what they are. But when could we maybe know about those things? Like, what's a timeline?
I hope we would already be on the project now, but we're waiting on blocks. Like I said,
it's a part supply chain.
It's a part supply that's actually slowed this whole process down. Mark Fritz is here, and actually I talked to him. We're going to try to do something together, and I think 6 months. I mean, I was hoping to have it right now, but everything got slowed down on the parts end of it that I had to just, people got to have an engine to race, so I couldn't chase this, and they're going to start racing now. So I would say 6 months.
A project like this is just like building a brand new house from scratch.
Yeah.
It's going to cost more and take longer than everything is going to.
Oh, those first engines, the first wide bore, the billet block, we had $60,000 in that thing, which is not feasible for a dirt.
No.
But we wanted to build it.
Right.
And Bob Miller, that actually sponsored Scott, is one that said, let's do that. And if it wasn't for him, I couldn't have done it at that time in my business. I mean, he was a big part of it.
Yeah, because that money at that time
is
huge.
Like
triple what a whole motor would cost.
And it was, the block and just the R&D for that part of it. It was outrageous.
Now, so when you went to the wide bore, how much of a change in bore was it? Where were you and what did you go to?
Well, that's another part of the evolution. All right, so we went to, it was like 4.165, and we went to 4.240. Okay. And I actually, I drove those things at Scott's too, and so I built myself one, and 4.250 is where I started it. And I raced it, and I'd had an engine that was close to that same cubic inch, just with a bigger crankshaft and a smaller bore before. And I told Jason, I said, this thing's better, but it's not like, wow. So I raced it there some, and we did it again, and we went to 4.260. Pretty much the same thing. When that thing hit 4.280 with my valve spacing and valve angles and all that, same camshaft, same engine, other than the bore, it was a different animal. I said, that's the sweet spot. So we went back and just pretty much everything we did from then on at that point, we started the bore at 4.280.
Okay.
And they'll say, you're taking life out of the block. I said, we're not doing this for life. We're doing this to win.
Right.
And still at that point, you've got more rebuilds in it than the block's going to live through.
Right.
So this new project is kind of along those lines, but the engine will be lighter, and it'll be bigger. It'll be just as smooth. It'll be basically, if you had a curve of how these things run now, it would be the same curve. It would just be right here.
Just move it up.
Yeah. Excellent. I'm not looking for anything here or here to upset our balance right now. It's just a straight up.
All right, we got just a couple minutes to go in this interview. At the end of each Hidden Horsepower, I ask for advice for the next generation. I feel like you kind of put it out there. Yeah. I have no racing experience at all, but I really want to do it. Please give me a job. Over and over again, and eventually they did, and you worked for a month with no pay.
No pay, yeah.
Just kept showing up. There's your advice.
Yeah. Right.
Let's hear Dale Earnhardt's story.
Really, the only real good one I've gotten, and it involves Bob. This is 86. Okay, so we go to the banquet, and won the championship, all the hoopla. Well, the whole team goes back to Earnhardt's suite. after it's over. And Bob Gurrell, I don't know if you know this or not, but back in that day, he said Morgan Shepherd was the best race car driver ever to drive a race car. Okay. He would take just a bucket of junk and make the race. So they're all giving speeches, and this is about the time, it's right before I'm going to go to Wall-Wax, and I'm supposedly going to drive this car, and I'm winning dirt races every week. And so Earnhardt's up there, and everybody's getting up and giving a speech about Dale or the season or whatever. And so Bob gets up on this table. Now, I had been around Dale Earnhardt, none really. At the track, you'd see, none. He didn't hang out at the shop a hell of a lot. And so I'm standing right behind Dale. Dale's right here and right here. And so Bob gets up, and everybody's had drinks and whatever. And so Bob gets up there on the table, and he's like, all right, he said, I've got to, correct myself. He said, Dale Earnhardt's definitely the best race car driver that's ever been, and so on and so forth. And then he says, can I say this? He says, I'm going to say it.
Yeah.
But that little cocksucker standing right behind you is going to be beating your ass in a few years. And Earnhardt goes, I'm going, I look like Snoopy back up. I don't know.
the origin of the emoji.
Yeah, it was like, that's Bob. I don't know. But that was about the only good Earnhardt story. I mean, there's some other little ones, but that was probably the most
good.
Classic.
That's a great one. I'm sure.
And that's par for the course for that time period too, right?
For that time period, and Bob Gurrell, if anybody knew him, I mean, this guy's a character. Still is.
Yeah.
80s NASCAR team people were characters. Like, they could curse like sailors, and that was how it was.
The first race I went, I'll tell you this, the first NASCAR race I went to, I was dying to go to the race. I'm working there. But the first one I went to, I rode with Chocolate Myers to Richmond, Virginia, in a Volkswagen bus that wouldn't run 40 off a cliff. It was like, are we ever going to get there? And there's a big chocolate driving.
Chocolate, man, wow.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun.
That's a guy I could tell some stories right there.
Oh, hell yeah, good.
Well, the whole character thing, like not like you're a character.
No,
right?
Just standard,
mellow kind of character, but that's what people like, and that's what legends come from, and that's why people want to tell these stories over and over again, and that's why I couldn't let you get out of here without here. Like, all right, I know this guy's got something that's going to be awesome. And
hey, you asked for it.
Yeah. You got it.
I've been around long enough to figure that out. Right? I know when there's a good story just under the surface, right? And this guy's got a bunch too. The thing is, can you tell it? That's the thing about stories, is that can you tell the story?
One of the things
publicly
that I've seen is publicly or not through those years is definitely built that sport, because the characters, not that you agreed with them, but they were characters,
right?
So it fascinated you to go, I gotta watch this deal, I gotta see what's going on with this.
And it was everybody. It wasn't just the drivers. It was the crew chiefs, the engine builders. I mean, back in the day, it wasn't just Dale Earnhardt. It was Robert Yates and Waddell Wilson. And you
mentioned Cale.
Cale,
like, there's a guy that we throw him out there. He's icon, legend.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the Dale Emmons of the world and all that, they were all part of the mix. That's what made it good. I mean, Jeff Hammond, those kind of guys. That's what was cool. You had all those different characters, and it was who's going to have the upper hand, who's going to come up with the next thing.
Yeah. Over the winter back then, the cars and I remember when the Pontiac came out, everybody was, that thing looks like a space shuttle and whatever, and it ended up not being any good. But
no, it was ugly.
It was terrible. But yeah, all that stuff was. It made it a lot more fun back then, I think, than what's going on right now. It's too. Well, it's just controlled so much. Right. Like I said, that's why I love dirt racing.
Well, so one last little thing I want to get out of you, because I know you had this experience. One thing that's different about building a dirt motor versus an asphalt motor. Because I know one time you were working on some stuff for your own car, and you went to Eldora, and you had we'll call it some lighter weight parts in the engine, and you're like, man, this thing's going to be awesome, and it was not what you expected.
No, because you figured out I said, the dirt world, from the beginning of the night to the end of the night, the track changes so much that the engine has to be more versatile. Well, at that point, you're going to give up a little bit on both ends of that spectrum to make it do, as I said before, A to B consistently all night. From the traction, all you can get when you get there, and at the end of the race, the track slows down 3 seconds, and it's slick as flickering hell. So you can't get a hold of the racetrack. So that's what the asphalt's pretty much. I know it changes, but not near like a dirt deal.
No, No, and you don't have a cushion either.
Yeah. You don't build a cushion up halfway through and say, well, I can bank off that if I get too loose.
Exactly. Makes a big difference.
Well, we already know that Vic is going to be back. He's been drafted into the round table.
Yep.
Keeping me here late.
Yeah, it's Friday. We got listen. Once a certain time happens, it's going to become happy hour here at the end of
Yes.
Expo.
It does happen.
That'd be good.
And it's going to be a good thing. You're going to love that. But Vic, thank you very much for joining us on
Thank
Hidden
you.
Horsepower.
Yep.
It was
Yes, sir.
awesome. Lake, another great one.
Oh, it's fantastic.